Hey, it's Joe from joecolantonio.com. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Applitools with UFT. So first, once you log into Applitools, first option you have is Automated Visual Test or Codeless Browser Test. I'm going to use Automated Visual Test. Second option is you need to select UFT. Once you select UFT, you just need to download their SDK, which is basically a QFL file that you just need to then add to Quick Test Professional. So I'm just going to download this. So once it's downloaded, I'm just going to extract it to my directory. And because we downloaded the SDK, we just need to then point UFT to the eyes QFL file. So go to File, Settings, and under Settings, go to Resources. And under Resources, you just want to click on the plus sign. Then navigate to where you extracted the Applitools SDK to. So then you just want to point to the eyes.qfl file and then click on Open. And once you've added it to the project, click on the Set as Default. And then click OK. So now Applitools is integrated with UFT, and you should be able to instantiate the eyes object and be able to get all the methods that you need to perform for your visual validation test. So once you have Applitools configured, it's time to create a test in UFT. For my test, I'm going to navigate to my test page. And in my test page, I'm just going to select version from the dropdown and just grab this text. That's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to add a Applitools checkpoint, which will take a visual checkpoint of this whole screen. So the first thing you want to do is just call the eyes.api key and just pass it the key that Applitools is assigned to. So next, I'm going to start adding the fields from my application that I want UFT to interact with. So I'm just going to add two elements to my object repository. The first one is the dropdown, which is called About, and the second one is the text area that I want to grab, which is called Answers. All right, cool. So once you have the object repository set up, next I'm just going to call my website. Then I'm just going to go in and select version and then grab the value that I want. So next you want to do an eyes open method. In that open method, you're just going to pass it the name of your application and the name of your test. So once you have eyes open, next I'm going to just add a checkpoint. And I'm just going to pass it the path to my application, which I have defined here. And I'm just going to give it a unique name that I can identify it with when I look at the UFT report. And then I'm going to close the eyes. And then I'm just going to write some information out to the reporter to show the status of the test. So let's run the test and see what happens. Okay, the test ran, so let's look at the results. So the first time you run, it will take a baseline image of your application. So I ran this before I did this recording, and it took a baseline image of what it looked like. And then when I ran it again, it took another image, and then it compared the two images. So when you look at the report, you'll notice that there's an error message. And in that error message, it gives you a URL to navigate to see what the error was. So I'm just going to navigate to this URL. And on the right-hand side, I'm just going to show the current image that was captured from my test run and compare it with the baseline image. Anything that's different will be highlighted in purple. So notice there's a time here, so it shows all the time differences. And there's a Google ad on this page, so of course that's dynamic. So all the dynamic data it's going to highlight. So because this is dynamic data, I want to ignore this. If it wasn't dynamic, if this was something, say I expected a button to look a certain way, and for some reason it was different than what I expected. So you can open up an actual bug if the visual difference was something that you really were interested in. But because this is dynamic data, what you can do is add something called a region. And this region will basically ignore any differences within the area that you highlight. So I'm just going to ignore the time here. I'm also going to ignore the time within the counter. And I'm going to ignore the add because that will always change. Okay, cool. So now what we've done is we've gone in and told Applitools that these changes are dynamic and we want to ignore these areas. So we highlighted those areas. So I'm going to accept this as my new baseline. And so now anytime I run, if there's a different time or if there's a different add, it will ignore it. But anything else that is different visually, it will flag and let me know that there's an issue. So what's really great about Applitools is it focuses on the visual validation piece that most functional test tools aren't good at, and run them against a huge variety of web browsers, devices, operating systems. So it really is a big time saver. Also, if you're using QTP or Selenium, you usually would have to do a assertion for all these. So you'd have to say, assert that my text box is empty. Assert that my last text box is empty. Assert that my click to wait 15 seconds has this text in it. You'd have to assert every single element that you wanted to visually validate. With Applitools, you could use just one checkpoint, and automatically, when you rerun it, it will compare against the previous baseline and highlight all the differences that it finds. So it's really, really a big time saver. So let's rerun the test and see what happens now that we accepted the new baseline. Okay, so let's rerun the test one more time. All right, so the test ran. Let's look at the results. It didn't fail this time. So let's go to Applitools and compare the images. So Applitools keeps a running log of all your results. So I'm just going to go to the latest results. And notice it didn't find any differences. If I compare it to the baseline, you could see it is correct and that it did ignore everything that we told it to ignore for the dynamic data. Awesome. So to learn more about Applitools, check out my podcast, Test Talks, episode 43. And I also wrote a blog post at joecolantonio.com talking about what is visual validation to learn more about visual validation. So that's how easy it is to use Applitools UFT. Hope it helps.